Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2025 IDD Topics and Trends. Thank you all for coming out tonight for an amazing webinar. It looks like people are still joining us, so we'll wait a few minutes to let everyone settle in. This is our fourth installment this year. And so if you want to go ahead and head over to our YouTube channel after this and view the other three, we had three other amazing experts in the IDD field do webinars earlier this month. So you can go ahead and head over there. But it's also our fourth year doing it. So we also have three other years of IDD topics and trends. If you're looking for resources or experts in the community, please go head over there. Okay, so tonight we have Demystifying Self-Determination, a practical conversations for families, and we have Lilian Ansari and Melissa Crisp Cooper with us tonight. For those of you who are new to Zoom, you are currently muted for this event. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and use the chat function to interact with us and with each other. If you're looking for a community, please chat to the other attendees as well. You can switch from all panelists to all panelists and attendees and go ahead and do that. Before we get started, I wanted to hear from you guys. So I will go ahead and run a quick poll. It has about 3 questions. We want to know how you heard about us, as well as what is your relationship to someone with IDD, and then what is your biggest concern when it comes to future housing and care planning for your loved one with IDD? Go ahead and answer those questions. I will give it about a minute. These questions help to inform us of the next topics that we'll be covering next year. We'll have another 4 to 5 experts coming in next year for this webinar series. It happens in July on Tuesdays. So if you're interested in that, please check back next year as well. Just give it a few more seconds. If you haven't already, please answer that poll. Okay. Thank you all so much. It's great hearing from you guys. Last but not least, at the end of this webinar, the last 15-30 minutes, there will be a Q&A section. So that is open for all audience members to ask questions to our panelists. And please go ahead and drop them in the Q&A function at any point within the webinar. Okay. Thank you all for participating in our polls. To start us off today, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director since 2007, Dana Hooper. Dana Hooper has been the Executive Director of Life Services Alternatives for the past 17 years, but his journey started many years ago when his son, Brent, was diagnosed with an intellectual disability. Over the years, he has become involved in many areas of the IDD world. He became a leader in our community, working with government and nonprofits such as Branch Services, where he was part of the board, Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired, where he was part of the board, the State Department of Developmental Services, and the San Andreas Regional Center, where he was also part of the board, and where his son, Brent, is a client in supported living. It also led him to his leadership role at LSA, where he can make a difference every day in the lives of the individuals that LSA serves. Dana?
Thank you, Leela. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight. And I would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce our 2 guests. And we're really super pleased and excited that they're here today. The first is Melissa Crisp Cooper, who is a writer, an adventure seeker, a health advocate. She currently serves as the Associate Director of Participant Experience at the ARC of San Francisco. She has cerebral palsy and uses a Purple Power wheelchair to navigate the world. She also brings a strong voice for numerous disability-related advocacy boards and committees. At home in Oakland, she and her husband, Owen, share their lives with two very opinionated black cats. Gotta love that. I have two very strong-willed dogs. In their free time, they enjoy traveling, good food, and attending adaptive yoga together. Also joining us is Melissa. Joining Melissa is Lilian. And Lilian is a parent of two children with disabilities and a passionate advocate for inclusion. For nearly 20 years, she has worked and volunteered with nonprofits and public schools, championing the rights of children with disabilities at the local, state, and federal levels. She is currently a program manager at Family Resource Navigators, that's a mouthful, and holds a master's degree in counseling, originally from Iran. She now lives in Northern California with her family and continues her lifelong commitment to building more supportive and accessible communities. Welcome, Lilian.
Thank you, Dana. Great to be here.
Super. The format is a little more complicated tonight because we're going to do I'm going to interview both Melissa and Lilian. And the format is I get to ask the questions and they get to share their answers with you. Once we finish this section of tonight, then we'll go to a general Q&A. And if you ask questions in the chat, that they will be presented to us to answer. But in the meantime, I'd like to get started, and I'd like to start with Lilian. And I'm guessing some of you are new to this concept of self-determination. Actually, not to self-determination. We all hope to determine ourselves, but in this case, it's a self-determination program that's offered through DDS here in the state of California. And I'm hoping that Lillian, you could maybe give us a little bit of overview of what the program is and, why it's important to people with disabilities and their families.
Sure. So self-determination program is a fairly new option for any consumer, any client of the 21 regional centers in California. Anyone over the age of 3 that is a client of the regional center is eligible to apply for this voluntary program. It can be complex, but kind of like the simplest way I can put it is that it's another option to receive services besides the traditional model, and it puts the individuals and families more in control of how the funds are spent. And it just kind of gives them more freedom, more control, and more options, and a lot more flexibility on how the funds are spent.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm used to what you're referring to as a traditional model. My son, lives with a couple of roommates and he gets support through supported living. And I don't know, we feel pretty good about it. But what maybe you could elaborate a little bit on those differences if that was the right thing for, if you were in self-determination and the right thing was get some supported living, how would it differ?
So it's kind of an example I can give of why. So I have a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old that have been part of the self-determination program going into the 5th year now. So we started kind of when it was being piloted for Regional Center of East Bay, which is what we were a part of at that time. the reason I chose SDP or self-determination program for my daughter, say, was that I was having a really hard time finding respite providers. And when we had to sign up with the respite agency, and we had to kind of either find our own people and have them sign up with a respite agency, or hire people that already were employed by the respite agency. The pay was kind of on the lower side. It was pretty much minimum wage, and it was really hard to find staffing. And so with the reason I chose self-determination initially for my daughter was to be able to hire my own person and pay them what I wanted to pay them, and have the flexibility of having them, drive my child or do other things that sometimes the respite agency wasn't allowing them to do. So we pay them a lot higher wage than the respite agency was paying them. And we were able to do, it was just like a lot more flexible. The types of tasks I could have them perform for us in the family. So that's kind of an example, but there's so many different things. Let's say my daughter or my son, who's older, needed a laptop for his, for researching things or for communication for kind of various reasons. He needed a noise canceling headphones. He needed an Apple Watch for my daughter needed an Apple Watch because she has seizures, and we use that as a seizure monitor for her. Those were things that we couldn't fund under the traditional model, even though there were things that were kind of directly benefiting her. Self-determination kind of helps you find a way to justify paying for those things. You still have to abide by the rules of regional center being the payer of last resort. So if there's another if your insurance will pay for a service or a product, or if you have CCS, or if school district will pay for it, regional center won't pay for it. But for something like a laptop and headphones and Apple Watch, those were not things that would be paid for by anybody else, that we were able to fund through self-determination. Personal training for my son who has sensory processing disorder. That was something that we were able to fund through self-determination, and so many other things. But as long as it kind of fits, you still have to, connect whatever service you get through the individual's IPP, and it still has to fit in within the parameters of kind of what DDS will pay for. But there's a lot more wiggle room on what they will pay for.
Wow, that's quite helpful, and I'm sure we'll get at that in other ways. Can we maybe shift gears, Melissa? Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what led you to explore self-determination program for yourself?
I first learned about SDP in the summer of 2018. It seemed like the program was designed for me. I was unhappy with the lack of choice and control I had with my supported living services (SLS) agency. The staff who helped me at home were underpaid, unreliable, and often unwilling to let me control my services. Before my SLS was transferred to this agency, I had a lovely person-centered agency that understood how I wanted to be supported. So, I knew there was a better way to get the support I needed to live life on my own terms. I quickly became active in the Self-Determination Local Advisory Committee for RCEB. My goal was to help shape the new program to be as person-centered and user-friendly as possible. Later that year, I was selected as one of the participants in the statewide pilot program. I was one of the guinea pigs who helped to work out the initial kinks in the program. There were so many dang kinks. It took me a year and a half to transition from traditional services into SDP.
Wow, thank you. Guess back to Lilian. Maybe could you share your personal connection to self-determination, and maybe talk a little bit about how it's impacted your family?
Yeah, I think I alluded to it a little bit already. So I have a 16-year-old daughter with disabilities, and as well as a 20-year-old. They're both impacted very differently. My daughter has a condition called tuberous sclerosis complex. She has developmental delays and epilepsy and autism. And my son has autism, dyspraxia, which is a motor coordination disorder, anxiety, and a learning disabilities, a few other things. And even though they have very different needs and they have different abilities, are impacted by their disabilities very differently. They've both been able to benefit from the program. Honestly, it's been sort of a game changer for us. They've both been able to get services that they were not able to get under the traditional model. And it's benefited our family. It's definitely been more work for me, but we can talk later about sort of ways to kind of simplify things and get the support. But yeah, so
Great.
it's been good for us.
Melissa, can you talk a little bit about how you use SDP and how do you work with your independent facilitator? And I understand there's a independent facilitator involved in the program. So how you work with it to make it all happen.
In SDP, I have control over who I hire and how much they are paid. Of course, their pay rate is determined by my budget and the amount allocated in my spending plan, but I try to pay them a fair wage. Hiring the right person can be difficult and time-consuming. The interviewing and onboarding process can be complex. I post an ad, interview potential candidates, select a candidate, wait for their background check to clear, help them through the financial management service, FMS, logistics, then train the new attendant. This process often takes 2 to 3 months. I have started asking potential candidates for at least a 6-month commitment. I can pay for other things that make a positive difference in my life as well. For example, I allocated funds in my spending plan to help make our home more accessible. I set aside some funds to pay for part of the rent to our house. I hired a handy person to help us maintain our home. SDP helps me pay for different forms of transportation so I can get to work and access the community. I used some of my funds to pay for the conversion on our accessible van, who we named Van Go. SDP also pays for some Uber rides so I can safely get to and from work in bad weather or at night. My funding pays for things that help keep me healthy, like adaptive yoga classes sponsored by Piedmont Yoga Community and a massage therapist. I am responsible for finding all these products and services and setting them up with my FMS. I have an independent facilitator who is more than willing to help me with these things, but I sometimes find it easier to communicate directly with my FMS manager. I am lucky that Owen understands the system. He often helps me navigate the hurdles. My FMS has become much less user-friendly and more bureaucratic over time. When I first started the program, I could simply email my FMS manager and ask for what I needed. Now there is a specific form for every request. Half the time the form is filled out wrong, so that means many emails with my FMS manager. Between approving timesheets for my attendants, submitting invoices for my vendors, and completing FMS request forms, I probably spent 4 to 8 hours a month on my SDP services. Late last year, my FMS stopped providing the co-employer model. They transitioned to the sole employer model, which means that I am now the employer of record. This transition involved lots of time and paperwork. My FMS still handles payroll and taxes related to this employment relationship, but I am responsible for everything else. Many FMS agencies have decided to only offer the sole employer model. If you decide to go into SDP, make sure you understand what models your FMS will offer and what services they provide. In May, I started my 5th year in SDP. Transitions between years are tricky and require months of planning. I must decide what will go into my spending plan for the year. My independent facilitator helps me allocate the money and plug everything into the spending plan. There is lots of back and forth between my CEB case manager, an SDP specialist, my IF, and me. I absolutely could not do this part without an IF.
Thank you, Melissa. Lillian, you kind of alluded to some of these, but, what are the biggest challenges, misconception, that you've seen or encountered when a family, starts getting involved with starting, the self-determination program?
Yeah, so, so similar to what Melissa was talking about, the first 3 years that my children had self-determination, I navigated it on my own, and it was challenging. I was spending a lot of time kind of going back and forth. I also had a a financial management service, an FMS, that was not very user friendly. So it took a lot of sort of back and forth and to kind of manage that. The fourth year, I hired a good FMS that has been very, very helpful. So I would highly recommend that. And the cost of the independent facilitator, paying for the independent facilitator, comes out of your budget. So it doesn't come out of, you don't have to pay for it out of pocket. So that, just going back a little bit, talking about the good stuff again, and then talking about the challenges, some of the other things that we've been able to pay for to address some of the challenges are paying for a parent coach, paying for an advocate. We've been able to get, like Melissa said, Uber rides because my children can't drive. Uber rides to kind of promote my children's independence. Because my son has a motor coordination disorder, he can't cut his own nails or wash his own hair properly. So he goes to the hair and nail salon once a month for grooming. He has someone that helps him with cleaning his apartment, things like that. We were able to fund. It's taken a lot of work, I won't lie. So it does have an administrative burden on the family. And Melissa is one of the very few self-advocates I know that is able to navigate and understand this process. Neither of my children can understand or aren't able to navigate this. So it's called self-determination, but really the self-advocate is in most cases not able to advocate. So somebody else, a family or somebody needs to help them navigate. Another challenge we've had is that there are always new changes and directives from Department of Developmental Services, DDS, so you have to kind of keep up. The first year we participated in self-determination, they were paying for almost anything I asked for. And then the second year and the third year, subsequent years, more and more restricted, and the rules kind of keep changing. If you don't have a good independent facilitator and if you don't have a good FMS, it can make the process a lot harder. So yeah, those have been, and just keeping up with all the changes in information has also kind of been challenging, but weighing sort of the pros and cons and figuring out if it's worth it. It's been worth it for us so far.
Oh, fantastic. Let me ask a little different kind of question. You know, we talk often about, person-centeredness and making sure that we're respecting what the individual wants, not necessarily what mom wants. Although those two can be synonymous. How do you include your children? How do you get their input and include their autonomy in this process?
So again, this is a place where I think a good independent facilitator would be able to help. One of the first steps of signing up and getting started with self-determination is to put together a person-centered plan. So a good independent facilitator can help put together a person-centered plan, and really anyone, even a person that communicates with a yes and no switch, can provide input on what they want and what they don't want. A good independent facilitator can kind of help get that information from the person if it's not from them directly, but from a group of support people. So we have almost like a board of directors, like an advisory committee for my children that consists of nine different people, of friends and family that know my children really, really well. And when we're making bigger decisions about their what what they have going on in their lives, we consult the advisory committee, and we always include our kids in the process, and they all sort of provide input for putting the person-centered plan together. And it's like a presentation. A lot of times it's like basically like a PowerPoint presentation where it talks about what they like, what they don't like, what their hopes and dreams are, what helps, what doesn't help, how to communicate, what are the challenges. They put all of that together, and it's a really cool document. If it's well done, it's a really great way to let's say present it to new providers, people, new teachers, new therapists that are working with my children. That is kind of tells a story about who they are, what they like, what they don't like. So just got to really be thoughtful and do your research and talk not just to mom, but to other people that are involved in my children's lives about what they see, as far as what helps, what challenges, what how to face challenges, how to get their input on what they like, and how to support them. So using kind of all the resources and the sources of information we have around us to put a story together, and to get their input as much as possible. I have one child that is more able to really verbalize what he wants and he doesn't want. He's very clear about what providers he wants to work with, what he doesn't. I have another one that's really not always able to verbalize what she wants, so it's a little bit harder to get input from her and get information from her. But I think that you can get input from anyone if you kind of take the time and
Yeah.
use the
Well,
right communication method.
fantastic answer. Thank you. Always a challenge, to tease that stuff out. And I know in my case, we've learned over the years that there's many cases of no that my son means yes. So there's a whole bunch of different versions of no. And how do you tease out the ones that are actually yes? Melissa, uh, in your experience, you've used both. You've used the traditional model, I think, supported living, and you've also used self-determination program. Um, what do you feel the differences are, now that you've made the switch?
Yes, being an SDP takes time, organization, and patience. But I love having more control over my services than I had under the traditional service model. I like choosing who supports me. These people are crucial to my independence and quality of life. Paying them fair wages is important to me. I typed this presentation on a high digestible desk that I purchased with SDP funds. I will use this desk for countless writing projects. In SDP, I can dream up so many creative ways to enhance my life. I could not imagine going back to traditional services.
Fantastic. Lillian, I guess a follow-up, advice for, new people who are exploring this. I've heard that people can feel a little bit overwhelmed. What's one simple, actionable first step that you'd recommend that they take, to go down that self-determination program path.
Think just like a lot of other situations, parents of children with disabilities connecting with other families who are a few years ahead of you in the process that have kind of done it, and I think talking to other families can be really useful about their personal experiences, and just staying informed, attending meetings like this, and talking to others that are navigating the system. There is a lot of support out there. There are the local advisory committees for each regional center, and you don't have to actually become a member. You can kind of attend their open public meetings. You can kind of attend and listen. So just really staying informed and connecting to other families would be where I would start, because let's say the very first step, if you're interested in exploring or signing up for self-determination, is an orientation. So you sign up, you go to your regional center's website, and they all should have a self-determination tab. Just kind of click on it and sign up, or if you can't find it, call your regional center service coordinator, case manager, and let them know you're interested in signing up for an orientation. You attend the orientation, and most people I know still leave the orientation not knowing what this is about. It's just
I've heard that too.
and so don't be discouraged if you attend the orientation. Don't be discouraged, because just think of it as, okay, I checked off the first step in starting the process, and don't be discouraged, and don't think that that's where you're gonna walk away knowing what you're supposed to do. No, really, the way you really know what you're supposed to do is by talking to other families and by having a good independent facilitator that can break it down for you and kind of walk you through it. So don't be discouraged if you attend the orientation.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great advice. Again, Melissa, looking back, and you've been through this process, right? And I think you mentioned some of the benefits, but just, maybe elaborate a little bit about the benefits that you've discovered and what the biggest challenges have been.
I am now entering my 5th year in SDP. There are so many things I love about this program. Yet, the pros are often intertwined with the cons. It is true that with more choice and control comes more responsibility and a lot more work. When I used traditional services, almost my entire budget paid for my supported living services. Traditional services basically paid the wages of my attendants and a staff supervisor, plus the administrative costs of the SLS agency. Now in SDP, there are no supervisor or agency costs. There is no supervisor to help manage my attendance or approve timesheets, so they get paid. Yet, I have more control over how and when I get support. I can also pay my attendants a higher wage, and I have much more flexibility over how I use my remaining funds.
Great. I have one more question, and I guess this one's a little bit more, personal, because, well, at LSA, we provide a number of standard programs and services, and, including a day program. And we often get, asked, oh, I'm in self-determination, and I'd like to, my daughter to be in your day program. I mean, how does that work? And I guess we've always just answered it as we have a standard program, and if you like it, well, that would be amazing. And we have a standard rate. It's the rate that state of California pays us. And trust me, they don't always give us a fair and equitable wage to be able to pass on to the people. But if you're up for it, you can access our program through self-determination. So it seems to work that way. So I guess my question is, being in self-determination does not prevent you from accessing and using standard services where they make sense. It just allows you to go way beyond and essentially customize your own services to meet your own specific, special, important needs. And so that's kind of my analysis of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, am I looking at it correctly?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just a lot more, it could be a lot more customized and individualized. For instance, my son is in a program, is in a day program, that on its own, it would not provide enough support for him in order to succeed in that program. But because we've added the additional services, for example, the house cleaning, and the hygiene support, an additional social skills coach, nutritional counseling. Those are things that are needed for him in addition to what the day program provides for him to be successful in the program. And it's not something that we would be able to provide for him under the traditional model. So it's really a lot more individualized and a lot more flexible. And there are families, so if a family is all they want to do is attend a day program, then no, this would not be something. And if that's enough for them, or if they just want to use, if if their children are in a group living situation and the services that the place provides is enough for them, then no, this would not be a suitable program for them. But if they want additional services or more individualized services, then this would be the way to go.
Excellent. And I could see where supplemental or wraparound services might make a whole bit of difference in terms of someone's success in a day program. So that kind of opens up the perspective. I think we're pretty much back to that point where we've gone through all the questions, and so I will hand it back over to Leela and put myself on mute because my wife just came home and the dogs are excited.
Okay, that was amazing. Thank you all for your conversation and insights. Right now, we'll be moving over to the Q&A section. So I just wanted to urge any attendees to put those questions in the Q&A part of Zoom. It's all the way at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A. Please drop any questions you may have for Melissa, Lilian, or Dana in that section. Okay, well, that was amazing, Lilian and Melissa. The last thing I heard, it sounds like self-determination is you're able to provide a more well-rounded supports to support the person being served. We did have a question about how can providers and regional centers better support families who want to explore the self-determination program, because it sounds like it's a lot of obstacles you have to jump through. Did Lilian, do you want to start and then go to?
I mean, again, just like I was mentioning, is staying informed. And connecting families to the right resources to kind of attend different forums. Or there's a really great, if anyone's on Facebook, there are a couple of really great Facebook groups where people kind of lurk and ask questions of other families, providers, and families that are kind of going through the process, just really spreading the word and letting them know this is an option, to get the information out there. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah, the independent facilitator, I think someone has a question about that, finding an independent facility.
Absolutely. Melissa would like to add something.
Yeah, please do. Yes, please do.
Keep them supposed to ask them. I can see if they heard. Case managers are supposed to ask families at IPPs if they've heard of self-determination or if they're interested.
Mm.
That's a good place to start. So that's a good place to start.
Oh, I see.
I
That-
think more and more, a lot of service coordinators still don't really know a lot, but I think more and more they are going to, and they're supposed to ask, like Melissa said, their families if they are interested in self-determination. Just, providers that's a good place to start. Let the families know, please ask your service coordinator about this program.
I see. So it's a lot on like the families or the person interested in the self-determination to really keep on asking and being persistent about it.
I mean, honestly, that's true about any service under the traditional model or any services. It's always kind of driven by the families, usually. And speaking from my own experience, the service coordinators don't bring you a menu of things that are available to you. It always has to be initiated by families, and this is no different, right?
Well, and it's kind of notorious that, service coordinators, they turn over a lot. I've had a bunch of them over the years, and I refer to them as the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right.
And there's been a lot of good ones, but it's difficult. It's difficult because the impression I'm getting is self-determination is more complicated. There's more options. There's more players in the process, and so it's inherently, going to be challenging to a new family that's exploring it. But by connecting with, with support groups, maybe improving the orientation, improving the knowledge and education of service provider, service coordinators, and also the program itself, I think has been tweaked over time, and I'm sure some of those tweaks have been, to fix flaws.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of moving parts, is what I'm hearing. And you guys have successfully navigated them over, a number of years, but the first years must have been tough.
It definitely was a learning curve, like I said, and then when you think you know what you're doing, then there are new directives and the rules change. So you do really have to stay informed and stay up to, keep up with the new changes all the time.
Yeah, it sounds it sounds very complex. I think I heard Melissa say something. She was saying about being part of the process of getting those bugs out. I'm curious, what was that like? Was you got to see it from the very early stages, right? How was that? Was it, I'm guessing much worse at the beginning or much more complex?
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, and the rules kept changing. It took a lot of time to wrap your mind around a whole different system, different service model.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's the case still a little bit. Um, Okay, I see that a question has come in about IF, independent facilitators, and kind of finding an independent facilitator. It looks like someone had been through the orientation and was wondering, is that really like the first step to blindly find one, or how would you, how do you go about starting the process of finding one?
I would like Melissa to chime in here too. For me, it was just again word of mouth and asking other families. But you know, it's just like hiring anyone else. You would kind of go through the list. DDS has a list of the independent facilitators, and there's also the there is a list, and I can't remember what the website is, but if you kind of ask your service coordinator, they might be able to send it to you, or there is a list off of the DDS website, I believe, where you go through and, you know, look at the available independent facilitators to see, you know, let's say for me, it was important to hire someone that was a parent of a child with a disability. I knew that's what I wanted. I felt, let's say, more comfortable working with a woman. I wanted, you know, so I just like hiring anybody else. You kind of go through the list, see, you know, read their bios, look at their rates, and see who may, which, you know, if what area of specialty they have. Like there are IFs that specialize more in adult services. There are ones that focus more on medically complex kids. So you go through and then pick who you want to, you reach out to them, and some are accepting new clients, some are not. You kind of weed through them, you talk to a couple of them and see who you gel with. And like I said, just like hiring anyone else for any job, you do your research and interview them and see who you connect with. But I found mine through a friend of mine that was using an IF and been working with them pretty successfully. But word of mouth is a good way to start.
You see. Melissa, yeah, did you, how did you find?
I think the IM network.
I think there's an IF network.
Yes, that's right. I
I
think that's what it's called. You're right.
Is it on DDS? Is that where the IF network is, or?
You know how I'm not sure how people find that.
I'm not sure how people find it.
I see. It sounds like definitely a good place to start is DDS, at least, for, you know, that preliminary information.
All you people who
Your regional center may also have resources.
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. It looks like, and then I guess how this person also continued to ask about like beginning with an IF and FMS, like how does that payment process kind of work? How do they work together, or how can you help them to work together? Yeah.
you get your budget and from the budget development whatever you get paid out.
Well, you start by getting your budget, which is the amount that you have to spend, and then from there you create a spending plan. And it's the spending plan that you give to your FMS, and then you work with your FMS to actually spend that money throughout the year.
I see. So the independent facilitator helps you create that spending plan, or is that on you to
Yeah.
do?
Yes.
Oh, I see. How are you, so do you wait to pay the independent facilitator after you've created that spending plan, or how does that work? I
Yeah,
guess.
so the independent facilitator is going to be one of the items on your spending plan, and then the financial management service will pay them. So I'm sorry, my mouse is not working, but I was going to put this website on. It's just the CASDPnetwork.org. So THECASDPnetwork.org. is where there's a list of independent facilitators, and you kind of the contact informations and bios are on there. For some reason, I can't access that.
Yeah, and I think maybe the logical question, and and I would have as a parent, the traditional model, there's the consumer, the service provider, and the regional center. Three parties, and there's a fourth party, in self-determination, and this is this financial management player that is actually the payer of the services, the holder of the budget. And so that's a whole new thing. And so maybe just tell folks a little bit more about how that budget gets set, and how and who organizes the services and arranges for payment of them.
So
I can see that.
What
the FMS is kind of like, think of it as an accounting service. That's kind of mostly what they are. They have a little bit more control than an accounting service, but it's a lot like the IEP process at school, where the services are driven by the person-centered plan and the IPP, the individual program plan that you have with your case manager, hopefully with your independent facilitator, with the consumer present. And so you set the goals, you talk about the hopes and dreams and goals, and then the services that are put on the budget are driven by those goals. So the tricky and a strange thing, and the thing that took me a little while to understand, is that when you are talking in the IPP, when you're talking about the budget, setting the budget, that doesn't necessarily, the services you put on there don't necessarily translate directly to the spending plan. For example, under the traditional model, most of us get 40 hours of childcare respite and childcare per month. So you put that on your budget. Let's say you put camp and all the social recreation, personal assistant, ILS, whatever services, you would get under the traditional model. But then once, so they kind of give you a budget based on those needs. Once you get this kind of pot of money and you are trying to fit it in the spending plan, then that's where you'll have a lot of flexibility. So I wanted to use a lot more than 40 hours a month for childcare. That's where I have the flexibility of, if I want 40 hours a week, as long as it's in my budget. Let's say on my budget, I listed all the things that my children would normally get under the traditional model. I list everything just to beef up my budget. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to use it on my spending plan. If I want to spend all my money on childcare, that's what I can do. If I want 40 hours a week of childcare, that's what I can do. So the budget and the IPP it's very bureaucratic. I know it sounds really bizarre, but what you put on your budget initially doesn't necessarily mean you're going to use that on the spending plan. And the FMS really doesn't have any control over this part of the process at all. They're just the accounting service that's going to give out the money. And there are different models, different kind of levels of control. There's like sole employer, co-employer, and I can't remember what the other one is, but where you kind of puts you
Move here.
Bill pay.
bill payer, that's right. So that kind of has different, let's say for sole employer, then let's say the consumer would be responsible for background checks, workman's comp, all those things. And if you don't want to have that much responsibility, other models are more attractive for someone like that doesn't want to have that level of involvement, where the FMS then would be responsible for the background checks and the workman's comp and the insurance and that sort of thing. So they do that. They take care of that part also.
That's very interesting. So then in that situation where you're kind of sharing the responsibility with the FMS, are you paying the FMS more? Are you paying the FMS more? Is that?
So that also comes out of the budget, like nothing comes out of your pocket.
Oh, yeah, of
So
course.
yeah, that also comes out of the budget. There is the regional center pays, I believe, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, they pay for some of the initial kind of onboarding things like the person-centered plan. They pay for it, and that doesn't come out of your budget, right? I think it's $2,000 where they pay for their person-centered
Yeah.
plan. Right. So that doesn't come out of your budget at all. But then, yes, what's called the employee burden, then depending on which model you use, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but then that also depends on which model you use and which FMS you use. They are all pretty similar. So all FMSs are kind of charging at about between 19 to 25% of the employee, what they call the employee burden, but again, comes out of your budget.
What does SMS stand for?
FMS,
FMS,
yeah, financial
Financial Management.
Yeah, financial management service, just like accounting service. So when I'm signing people up as vendors or employees, I just tell them, we're using a payroll service. Are you willing to sign up for the payroll service? Without going into too much detail about what this is about. And most people are okay with it. You can either hire a person as an employee, depending on the model you choose. You can either hire a person as an employee or as a contractor, as a vendor. And that's kind of one of the other advantages is that right now, under the traditional model, regional centers will pay for social recreation services, but then you either have to go with a provider that's vendorized by the regional center, or you have to become the I think designated payee, I can't remember what it's called, but basically like becoming, then you pay the providers and then you get reimbursed for it. But under the self-determination, you can hire whoever you want. They don't have to be vendorized by the regional center because the vendorization process can be quite daunting and a lot of people don't want to deal with it. But becoming a vendor for self-determination is a lot simpler. It's like usually just a DocuSign. You do have to have a business license in most cases, unless you're an employee. It's very easy to sign up to become a vendor or a provider for a person. That's a huge advantage in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and we're very familiar with how fun the vendorization process is. And I'm just kind of sitting here thinking, a lot of what we do is all that lifting, all
Right.
the hiring, all the vetting of employees, the paying them, managing, all of those things behind the scenes. And so one of the big benefits of, if you find the right one, a vendor with a traditional service is that they do all that lifting and you don't have to get involved. I haven't interviewed one of my son's supported living staff in 20 years. Um, I mean, he still has interviewed them and fired some. And but I haven't had to be involved because, the supported living agency, that's one of their core things. And luckily haven't had to. The turnover's been, almost non-existent.
That's lucky.
That's very helpful to me. Uh, I thought a couple of times maybe I should look into it as a parent.
Okay, well, we're getting close to 7:30. One last question in the chat, but really it's, is there a link, like a 101 self-determination? Because the regional center case manager may not be very knowledgeable. And I think we are going to share that link with you. It's on DDS, correct? Perfect. We will drop that in the chat in about a minute. And you'll be able to see that. Okay, as we're wrapping up this webinar, if you are interested in talking more with Lilian or Melissa, please contact them at their email. They were nice enough to give us those. So shoot any questions over to them directly. And then you can also contact us if you're interested in LSA services or have any questions. You can go ahead and email us, visit our website, and please follow us on social media. We got pretty much all of them. And then visit us in person at Run Home 2025. It's September 6th at 9 a.m. This is a fun run, walk, roll, sit and cheer. Just sit and smell the grass. Please come. You can register at the link on the QR code right on the screen, and it's also on our website if you go over there. Thank you so much for joining us for the last installment of 2025 IDD Topics and Trends. It's been a blast. Thank you so much, Melissa and Lilian and Dana. Really appreciated the conversation tonight. And have a great night, everyone. Oh, real quick, the link is in the chat for that person asking for the Self-Determination 101 link. I want to give you a minute to grab that before. You can also go to the DDS website and search self-determination. I bet it'll be first or second page you see. Okay, have a great night, everyone, and thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian and Melissa. You were amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks,
Wow.
Leila.